Hello, and welcome to Chatting Fit, the podcast that gives you knowledge, opinions, and interviews in the world of health, nutrition, and more. I'm Finlay Maclaren, and today we'll speak to Mike Calder. Mike is an elite Olympic weightlifting coach, as well as owner and founder of London Olympic Weightlifting Academy. So I met Mike back in 2012. I was a fresh-faced PT. And I was in pretty bad back pain. I couldn't really lift properly. Trained with Mike for quite a while, actually, around a year. And he basically got my back pain to completely disappear. I was staring down the barrel of surgery, which I'm sure he gets a lot of clients coming in saying the same thing, and sort of solved the issue. And I then didn't have to get surgery. Should have never looked at surgery anyway. He's lifted internationally. The Youth Commonwealth Games. He's coached elite athletes, he's coached amateur athletes, and always makes them hit a peak performance. Now, if that hasn't given him a big head, then I don't know what will. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Finn. I'm excited.
It's a pleasure. So before we get into any of the kind of nitty gritty, I'm just curious. So what is it about weightlifting and Olympic lifting in particular that you love, and how did you kind of get into it?
So I started young, so I was really fortunate. I was always into sport. I had a big dream, like many other kids, of playing football. I was pretty rubbish, so I struggled to make it into the team, which, I persevered, got there. But I really needed something else to try. And I was very fortunate that a science teacher, Phil Carlson, at my school, he ran an after-school club, weightlifting, 3 days a week at the time, I think it was. And there was an opportunity to go down and try out a session. A few of my friends had already been and kind of like spoke highly of it. And I just really fancied trying something new. I remember that day one, and the guys had already done clean and jerk first, and they were just learning the snatch. And I come in and he's like, right, take hold of the bar, hold it over your head, sit down. And I was like, sat down on the bottom of the squat looking over at him. He's like, what, like that? And he's like, yeah, like that. And that's pretty much where it started. And it's hard to say where I kind of fell in love with the sport, but there was this real sense of achievement that very few other things give you that weightlifting can. And I was just hooked right from the get-go. It kind of filled that gap of wanting to do something sporty. And there was all those quick progress and learning and just that stimulus that sometimes you crave. And weightlifting kind of gives you all of it.
And Phil Carson, was he a kind of established weightlifting coach?
He was an enthusiast, shall we say. So he was a science teacher. He wanted to offer this as an extracurricular activity for the kids at the school. And I don't think he started with the intention of it growing as much as it did. And so he started off being just an enthusiast, and very quickly he became an established coach, and he produced many national youth champions, and many of them went on to lift internationally. Ben Watson went on to actually win medals at the Commonwealth Games. So he's inspired a lot of kids to get into the sport, and it's a shame that there's not more of it in the country.
Yeah, I was speaking to Ramsey the other day, Ramsey Kashasha. I think you guys know each other as well. And
I know Ramsey.
Talking about how it's a bit of an issue that we don't have more kids actually working in sport, not working in sport, but following a sport and training in a sport at school and having these after school clubs. And it takes, great people like Phil Carson and other great people who give up their time and are enthusiastic about stuff to actually instill kind of inspiration within kids to get them into these sports. But that seems to have dwindled somewhat.
Yeah, I think the issue is that the facility needs are quite small. We need a space, flat floor, equipment. The key is what we need is people. We need their time, we need their interest, and we need their passion to share that interest for the sport. And then the kids will, the ones who are going to make it they will absolutely thrive. And then those who don't go that far, at least they've had that experience and they do carry that on into later life. Amount of people I've met who said, oh, no, I used to do weightlifting when I was a kid. And no, there's this confidence that it still gives them 20 years later on, that people who don't have that experience will kind of never know that difference, if you know what I mean. So I think it's our focus as a nation needs to be towards the people. And if we need a small space and we need to fill it with just good people, and that's what we need. And I think that actually could be an easy problem to solve. The issue is that time for everyone is quite valuable. So to be able to give up a couple of hours of your day to train people is a very hard thing to do these days. Whereas I feel it used to be a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah, I mean, when you say the space, I mean, I'd see the main barrier for especially Olympic weightlifting is like appropriate flooring. And like, I mean, and some of the kit now is pretty expensive. I mean, unless you can get secondhand kit, I guess school looking at their balance sheet would be like, no, we're not going to spend like $1,000 on bars and bumper plates. And then flooring, like a lot of these gyms, they're kind of old wooden flooring. They might not have the surface underneath to take any impact. And I suppose you're talking about working with kids who are maybe not lifting like any more than 30 or 40 kilos. But I mean, there are barriers to entry on getting people started in this stuff.
Yeah, of course. I think it's, but if you imagine the old gym hall, just something flat, concrete, it is doable. Kit wise, yes, it can be expensive to get started, but that kit, especially with the kids, will last. If they buy right, it will last them several generations. It's not going to be something that wears out and has to be replaced yearly. So yeah, you're right. There is that barrier to entry from that point of view. But as soon as you've established a base of kit and facilities and things like that, all you need then is just people, And I think much people quite often when these budgets is that they put so much into the fit out of a gym to make it look nice. It's like a lot of these gyms, they're obsessed with putting platforms in. That's £2,000 that you've just added to your bill. And who needs a platform? Platforms are for competition.
Yeah.
That's the only time you need a platform. But it's very early on is that a weightlifting gym has people are lifting on £1,000 worth of platform, let alone kit. And that gets super expensive. All you need is a concrete floor. And then if it's a nice solid floor, bit of rubber on top, and you're good to go.
Yeah. And what is it about? I mean, there's so many people who go from, because I make a distinction here that weightlifting or Olympic weightlifting is a totally different beast to someone going in the gym and lifting weights. Like it's a clear distinction, and Olympic weightlifting is something that will make you very strong and very, very mobile, where lifting weights in the gym can often kind of damage you just from poor mechanics and poor movements. And I definitely experienced that, having lifted until the age of 18, probably just rounding my back in every deadlift I did and butt winking every squat. So what is it about Olympic weightlifting that makes it a totally different beast?
Well, it's the nature of the function. So weightlifting itself is, I used to say a lot, is gymnastics with barbells. So the beauty of the sport is that you can only lift what you can mechanically move. So you are very limited by your technical ability and your ability to flow through the key positions and shapes. And if you can't do that, you won't be able to lift the weight, even if you're physically strong enough. Whereas what you had with a lot of people going to do, especially used to be more so with the fixed weights, is that you can overload the body very, very quickly and the quality of movement isn't punished.
And when you're saying fixed weights, you're talking about weightlifting machines or?
Yeah, the old traditional would be, your leg press, your leg curl, leg extension, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. There's no skill acquisition to it. So you're not punished if you don't move that well. So you can really, really load the muscular tissue, but there's no skill element to it. There's no kind of balance and coordination or any of these sort of things. So you can really stress the muscular system, and it's usually not during the session, but after, when the compensation is happening and the recovery, etc., that causes the most stress on the body. Whereas weightlifting, it's very difficult to get to that point because the nature of the motion is full range of motion. Is the biggest thing when you're getting into it is that you're actually trying to become more mobile, to travel through more range of motion, and to be then amplify that by being stronger in all of those positions. So you even become safeguard those positions because you are now developing more strength in those end range positions where you can do a squat as lighty and kind of the range of motion means nothing just on a back squat in itself. So it's easy to incentivize or be incentivized to shorten the range of motion to be able to lift more weight, especially as the language would be is that, you want to be able to lift the most weight. So one way you can do that is just by butchering the range of motion and things like that. And then you have a lot of kids like yourself probably coming from sport, those who were kind of doing rugby, and it was like this idea of strength was just most weight possible. So things have changed a little bit, function and range of motion and stuff like that has really changed, especially in sports like rugby. But probably still the ego will be is like, right, how much weight can I put on this? Whereas weightlifting, you had to put the ego aside really quickly, because I've seen so many strong guys and girls come into the sport and they're not as good as they want to be because they don't have the range of motion, they don't have the timing, they don't have that finesse, and they get punished. So being strong is not enough.
Well, also I think people get addicted to the pump, and people get addicted to, and I can only relate to my own experiences here, but like I wasn't happy at the end of a session unless I was in like a pool of sweat on the floor and absolutely dead, unable to think or speak. So it took a good 6 months, maybe even like the whole time we were training together, to constantly groove that cycle of, okay, I've just trained the movement today, and I've trained more of the kind of central nervous system for contraction, and to just get used to the body positions and the strength of contractions, and see that as more valuable than actually getting DOMs and, crushing my muscles and worrying about aesthetics. And funnily enough, I actually got far better aesthetics after completely remapping the training to worry about function rather than, being tired at the end of the session. So I saw benefits far outweighing when I actually changed the focus.
Yeah, and that's quite common, and I think that's a language thing. It's a generational thing. It's where the idea is go hard or go home type of approach. It's all in, and for a lot of people, it was the only area that they could say that they actually tried their hardest. They could say, actually, no, I really trained hard today. Look at me. Now I'm on the floor in a puddle of sweat. My whole body's shaking because I've jacked up my nervous system so much. And that's because from my point of view, being in sport like weightlifting, is they just didn't have a high enough, they don't have a clear goal. They don't have an outcome in which they're going to. And I found weightlifting was really good for that, because there was always something to progress in, to kind of these small changes, and then you compound those over time and you can make massive differences. Especially myself as a coach now, I see people coming in and they don't understand how much potential they really have. They have no idea how far we can actually push them. And then quite often the conflicts we have is that they feel that they want to train harder. But for them, harder is not beneficial, because all they end up doing is they exacerbate all the things that are bad about what they already do, and they underutilize all the things that they could probably be better at. So you always end up in this default moving towards your strengths, whereas weightlifting is about working on your weaknesses. It's just purely about overcoming your weaknesses and turning those into strengths, and have this when I'm working with new people, is that they go, I'm really bad at this and this. And it's like, well, you don't want to break their heart and tell them that basically they're bad at everything. Because if you look at where they really want to be, is that ultimately they're not good at any of those things by the standard of where they would like to be. So they only have the appearance of being good at maybe like their leg strength's quite good, because it's easy for you to get a head start on your legs being strong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So quite often it's like, but I can squat this. And I'm like, yeah, but it looks like crap. It's like, it's not worth much. So it's that trying to break that barrier down is quite often our biggest challenge when getting someone in. And that's where I think language is really important, and being able to change that. And it would take time. I remember first opening up a gym, and, you've got a room literally full of beginners, and they outnumber the amount of people who know how to do it properly. So they are the majority. So therefore, that mob rule, right? So they dictate the culture of the club. And then eventually you have to kind of chip away at kind of more people knowing what they're doing. And now, as a club, is that the majority of people move very well. And anyone who doesn't move, they are the minority. So therefore, the culture kind of can be, is very, very different. That language, the strength of that language has a different value now compared to when we first started.
Yeah. Seems like it starts to kind of take on a life of its own. You kind of light the fuse, get some momentum going, and then you've got the more experienced members are kind of almost gently coaching the newer members on the side.
100%.
Going back to your comments about, weak as piss squats. I mean, I think I have still in my head all the time, you echoing your voice going, "You're weak as piss," every time I go into a squat. So it kind of it makes me brace my core a bit more and actually like sort my technique out. So you'd be glad to know that.
I think what it is that, usually I use that term because quite often we have this thing is that our ability to teach, in a good weightlifting setting, to teach relatively good technique, the foundation, the fundamentals is pretty good. So a lot of people have good technique, or they have a good understanding of what they would like to be able to do. But quite often is that their body is poorly equipped and poorly conditioned. So therefore they can't do it as they would see it in their mind's eye. So it's trying to teach people that you have to take that as you have to become stronger at that. It's not a given. Quite often I get upset with people looking at technique as this thing that's passive. It's just a thought, and it's this thing that makes things easier. What it is something that makes something more efficient, especially when done loaded. So it's like strength is technique, technique is strength. And quite often then people look at this technique as this like this roadmap of something suddenly becoming easy. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, the reason I've never been good at this is because, I've just been doing it wrong." And it's like, no, the reason you're not good at it yet is because you're weak as piss. And then solving that by going further into your strengths and exacerbating your weaknesses isn't the answer.
Yeah.
It's about being able to highlight your weaknesses and to turn those into opportunities, as it were. And then you turn those into your strengths. When that happens, then stuff happens. That is how we make progress in anything in life. And your weaknesses are your biggest opportunity. I remember this feeling as a young athlete, and I don't know where it came from, is when I was highlighted a weakness at that moment in time, I just saw it as this easy game. It's like, "Oh, Mike, you're not very good at this." And it's like, wow, if I go away and work on that, I'll be better, And it was more often than not is because it was neglected or misunderstood or something that I didn't see value in. And someone just said, "Look, if you get good at this, it's like you're going to be better." And it's like, cool, let's go do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's also seems like the fear that some people have once they start breaking down their technique and isolating those weaknesses and working on those weaknesses, they start losing that buzz that they used to get from, hitting PBs all the time, just working on the strength. Sweet, I got a PB shoulder press.
But this is where I think the language is important, right? Because if there's something that you're poor at, you've always been poor at it, right? And what it is that now you're aware. Do you know what I mean? Before you were unaware, you thought you were strong, and now someone's saying, "Mate, actually, you're not that strong." And that creates this opportunity, but it was always there. But now you have a thing where you can make a PB or progress within what you can already do, So if it's that lockout position, for example, is that you can make progress in the lockout. So therefore you're just better, So I think that ego is that because they're getting drawn away from the things that they either like or they feel that they're strong at, but grossly their strength is being held back by their weaknesses. So your strength isn't a strength. It's not where it should be. It's not everything that it could be. And that's the difference between being kind of good and then being very good. And then there's that level above it, which is going to be exceptional. And it's that ability to step in and deal with the easiest game that you have today, which is your biggest weakness. And it's always been weak. And that's a psychology and it's a language. And then a lot of people want to fight that because they feel like they're missing out on something, that you're asking them to move away from what they're already, their strengths. It's like, let me go. No, big one is like, let me go get really strong. And it's like, yeah, but what you're going to do is you're going to get slower because there's a handful of things that you're not doing properly. And that's why your amazing back squat isn't translating back into a snatch or clean and jerk. So there's a reason why it doesn't translate. And we can see it on paper. We can see that, you got a massive squat and then your clean's nothing. Or vice versa, we can say is that your clean's massive and we can see that your strength's below where it should be. And you need to go get to work, some good, honest work. And you're going to have to put some time into it, and it's that element of time where at the end of the day, a lot of these people who will be listening to this sort of podcast is that they're willing to put in the time, but, they'll be 4 or 5 years, they'll probably still be training. You'll be still training in 10, 15, 20 years. So how much time do you actually have? And you're going to deal with these things now, or you're going to deal with these things in 10 years? You're going to do the time anyway. So you might as well just start working on what's going to actually make you better and not waste that time. And I think that's the difference. The top athletes are the ones who saw that opportunity earlier. They did or didn't realize that they're going to still be in the sport in 10, 15 years. They did the work. They've got all that groundwork behind them. They've got no weaknesses left. So that's why these guys are the ones who end up on the world stage. And that's all it is. That's the difference. It's that ability. And on whatever level, and people know what level they want to play at, right? It's if you're an absolute lunatic and you're a maniac and you're training every single hour you've got, is that you can really turn your body into a weapon. If you're only putting in, 3 or 4 hours and you got a full-time job and this is a serious hobby, then you're going to be good, and you're going to be, it's going to be a different level, right? But if you put no time in, then obviously we know where that's going to end up.
You're going to be weak as piss.
Yeah, forever.
And what would you say is the, you're talking about taking people away from just focusing on their strengths and realizing if you work on your weaknesses, it will actually make you stronger overall. How do you make that? Is there like a roadmap you work with, or like a special kind of way of thinking that you try and push people towards, especially when you start working with them, new people to weightlifting or any sport really, a particular way that you try and groove them into thinking, and any techniques you say that they should use, especially for people who are, either just starting out as amateur or moving from trying to push that amateur level? Yeah,
I think spending a lot of time on the mindset is critical, because it's this whole notion of learning from your mistakes or whatever, is to have this deep appreciation is that no one's ever come to me and not given them a good effort. Everyone's tried. No one came to me trying to be shit. No one intended to be rubbish. So from that point of view, let's just put aside the amount of effort put in. I feel like they put their effort in. They give me their best. And then what it is that it's being able to focus on the things, the elements that are going to make a difference. We spend a lot of time on letting go of their perception of where they're at. Quite often, especially with the guys, but not, is that they attach their ego to their outcomes. Okay. So, if you were to go in and miss a snatch or something, is that you would feel that represents you as a person in some shape or form, that represents your best in that moment. And it's the outcome that defines you. But really, it doesn't. It's just one moment. There'll be another snatch 5 minutes later. There'll be 1,000 more snatches coming in the next couple of years. It's like whatever. It's just a feedback in the everlasting kind of journey. And the other thing I talk about is that you have no ownership on your outcomes. So say you snatched 100 kilos yesterday. That doesn't give you the right to snatch 100 kilos today, but you probably have the right tool set to snatch 100 kilos today. Do you know what I mean? Your body's the same vehicle. The only thing that you carry over to tomorrow is your knowledge, is your mindset, is your core beliefs and things like that. And either those core beliefs are helping you kind of snowball and improve and move towards a bigger outcome, or you start hiding behind the fact that, I deserve this outcome and that is where I'm at, and anything less than this is disappointing. But sometimes you have to, when you're working on something, is that you're going to dim down a strength and you're going to kind of turn on a weakness. So maybe you might miss a couple of more snatches because you're trying to work on a change in timing or positioning, or it makes you a little bit more vulnerable, or it feels unfamiliar, etc. So the outcome is, in the short term, is going to be down. But maybe when you have that in your toolkit and you feel stronger in that position in months to come, it's going to lead you to another 10% in your overall performance. And it's that circle that people go through. And unfortunately, in amateur weightlifting especially, is that people will use injury to create change. People wait until they're in pain and then they will make a change. And then quite often they'll make that change temporarily. And then when they get back up to their heavy stuff, they'll do it just as they did before and hope that this time they don't break. And what it is that if you can start getting an athlete to look for those changes much earlier, is that maybe we don't need to get injured first. I have many athletes who just like, injury is that thing. It's just part of sport. It's just what happens, when you're pushing yourself. And it's like, well, to a point, you could be some truth in that. But in reality, you're just probably doing something poorly. Maybe in some shape or form, you're just not fully equipped, and maybe when you're looking for that last few percent and you're going to go on the world stage or whatever, maybe you'll put your body on the line that last little bit. But when you've got your CrossFit athlete or your kind of regional athlete, do they need to go to those lengths to find those last couple of kilos? I probably think not. So I think it's that little shift in mindset. There's that ability to kind of just be really kind of neutral to maybe what happened right now. And I think this is where having periods of your training where you were designed to peak, drop off, times to kind of push the fitness side of your training, and then not being too attached to the outcome, but more the input that went into it. Because if we kind of build up the inputs, the outcome is going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's just science. If you're generating more force through a cleaner movement patterns, at some point it will start to stick and you will just lift more weight.
And that's especially in terms of what you've built there in terms of community at London Olympic Weightlifting Academy. It's the difficulty of doing that without the knowledge base and the community around you to, one, keep you honest so that you don't say to yourself, oh, I just hit a PB squat, and when your PB squat is just utter garbage. So it's having the people around you to give you that feedback. And that's what I've certainly struggled with over the past few years, going in and out of gyms and traveling a lot around the country, and not having a kind of stable base and community to work with, is not having that feedback to say, look, Finn, you're lifting like shit, or right, that was the decent lift, like just repeat that, do it again, or drop the weight down and get some more repetitions at that weight, rather than saying, right, I've hit that lift and now jack it up again, jack it up until I fail.
Yeah. And that's quite common. I think there's quite a lot of us now who know weightlifting is a team sport. We compete individually, we lift individually, but it is a team sport. There's nothing like being around your peers and like-minded, that energy that brings out those better qualities, that accountability, that ability to say, this is actually good, honest work today. And, maybe sticking a bit lighter and making it look better. You can copy each other. So there'll be some things that you're good at that maybe I'm not good at. And then, so we symbiotically learn from each other constantly. And sometimes it's permission. So say I see you do something amazing. It's like, I want a bit of that. So therefore I become inspired to do the same thing. And if we've got quite a strong language and kind of mental kind of toughness, is that it's really easy to kind of get people into that state of mind and to sustain that. It's really important to get rid of the bad eggs. You don't need people kind of telling you how it's hard. It's like, we know it's hard. That's why we're here. It's like, that's what makes it fun. If it was easy, we wouldn't be doing it. It'd be like a waste of our time. So it being hard is like, I want it to be hard. I don't want it to be easy. I want to have the courage to kind of push myself, find my limits, challenge my weaknesses, to kind of inspire others, lead by example. You know, if I was to train with you, I'd want to make things appear more comfortable than maybe they actually feel. And hopefully you would do the same thing, and it'll be like, oh my God, look how comfortable he looks with at his 85% snatches today. I'll be like, I better make this look good, you know? Just those little things, when people are new, just teaching them the etiquette and things like that, because it just takes a lot of the thinking out, like people still think it's okay to run across their platforms and stuff. And it's just not. It's like, that's just not good enough. And, if you're in my gym, I'll probably tell you that 1, you're a dickhead, and 2, bang out some burpee tuck jumps, because don't do that again. And like, yeah, but I could save it. No, I don't care. It looks bad. You're putting other people in danger. You're putting yourself in danger, and you're teaching yourself that that's okay. And it's not. And then why are you saving it? Just ego. It's like, oh, because I can. Yeah, but it looks like shit. So just put it down anyway. You fucked it up already. So, and that's where you kind of build that culture, and you build that strong community, because our core beliefs, we actually have some. There is a bit of a philosophy. We can have our differences, but it's that structure that gives people, they can just work on the bigger stuff instead. Yeah. I
think it was, who's the kettlebell Russian guy? It's like Pavel Sasulin or something. And he always says, don't step over the bar, because the bar will get you back. So stuff like that just make you respect the whole sport, and the actual, the small things, doing the small things right, carry over to having the big differences.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I try hard now. That there's a few little things that my coach used to teach me, and it's easy to not value them. It's just like how a bar plate faces on a bar, right? So if there's print on just one side of a plate, now I like to teach that, the first plate faces inwards, and then all the other plates like that face outwards. Just little things. Otherwise, those things will never be passed on. They will be lost forever, like a lot of the great stuff that we have in our training history. Is a lot of these things don't get passed on, so they do get forgotten.
Well, this is also another issue. I can't remember who was saying it the other day, but it was that back in the day, pre-internet, in order for someone to get strong, they really had to research it, know the people they were speaking to, and be able to sort the good information from the bad information. The ease of it was certainly much harder to get that information.
Yeah.
Of today and of late, there's so much information out there, especially around nutrition, technique, mechanics, that anyone can find all this wealth of information, and as long as they follow it well, they're going to get strong.
Yeah, I think it's it used to be is that you used to have a mentor of some shape or form. It would be a coach. That role would be, there would have been a lot more loyalty to a system, a methodology, and you had to be there. You had to kind of turn up and absorb that information, and it was a very practical thing, right? Because it's live and you're just doing it, and there was no watching stuff back. There was none of this. So a very intrinsic feel to this knowledge. So the way that I feel like the old school lifters, for example, is that they have this very intrinsic strength, whereas now everything's a little bit more extrinsic, very visual, learning, and then you're seeing a multiple array of athletes from all around the world, and you can access it instantly. And then you kind of get sidetracked by becoming the expert of how they train for their body, where they're at, and they only show you what they want you to see, right? So it's not like you're seeing everything. And so it's this very thing where people are getting good, but they don't know how or why or when it happened, if that makes sense. They don't know what made the difference. And it will be, usually they'll kind of get hooked on the things that they feel good about. And usually the things that they feel good about aren't the things that are actually making the difference. Because if it feels good, it's probably something that you're already good at. If it feels like it's quite challenging and it's like, making you think a little bit harder than everything else, then it's probably the thing that's going to make a biggest difference to your training. So I think that understanding of what works and what doesn't work. So it's easier to fall into being a very emotional with your training now. See people switch programs very quickly. This one's not working. Let me go try this one. And quite often it's not really the program. It's how you apply the program. That's going to be the biggest problem most of the time.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of switching it a little bit, but you started your gym a while ago, and we've just gone through this crazy year with coronavirus and the gyms being allowed to open for a little bit and then shut again and then open again and then shut again. I know it's a bit left field from what we've just been talking about, but what do you kind of see coming down the tracks in terms of the gym industry?
I feel that it's hard to say, really. There's going to be change. I think we're becoming more informed than ever. And I think we're just getting to the stage where people realize that accountability and consistency are some of the key pillars of making progress. So I feel like there's going to be more people interested in that probably more distant program, the knowledge of programming, the ability to apply it, and that slightly different feedback loop, because there's a lot of people who do like follow me or no non-continuous programs, right? So you turn up to a lot of HIIT programs and stuff like that. So they're a one-off, right? So sure, they will make you sweaty and all this sort of stuff, but they're written in a way that there's no progression to it. So I think the industry is going more towards progressive. So therefore it has more curriculum, it has more process, there's more of a start point, and people moving towards different goals, etc. So they're trying to move towards something. I feel like the body composition market, they're in a pretty steady place. There's always going to be room for people wanting to improve their body composition. They particularly attract those who are already in pretty good shape and they want to get super ripped. And then obviously you've got the other side with those who are overweight and wanting to kind of get into some better shape, better health. And I feel there's that middle market of people looking to learn more, and people have the information, but they need it organized. They need it put in front of them in a way that they can actually progress towards an outcome. So I would like to see that side of the market improves. And I think the area that we probably need to really get that is in the schools, our kind of 30 plus market, they're probably more active than ever. They appreciate that side of it. That kind of under 30, it's probably a little bit hit and miss. I imagine they just probably feel a little bit lost. I think there's big scope for giving them a bit more direction, because I think accessing sport isn't as easy as it used to be. And gyms are easily accessible. It's easy enough to get a gym membership and to kind of get yourself training somewhere. But to do it in a way that you feel that you're feeling doing something meaningful or progressive isn't necessarily that easy. You can get a personal trainer or whatever, but even then it's easy to fall into the trap of just looking at body composition, just to look at overanalyzing what you're eating, when you're eating it, how you're eating it, how many calories are you burning, etc. I think people kind of are they crave that knowledge and being able to apply it over a longer period of time. But that takes patience, and you need good leaders to bridge that gap, really, because you need a mentor or a coach who can give you that vision that's much bigger than just a 3-month fat loss, which you can probably do every year for the rest of your life if you want, and not feel any better for it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why a lot of people get into it in the first place. A lot of people don't get into it thinking, I really want to get strong. I mean, there are a minority that do that, but a lot of people get into it. It's like the injury issue. People work on the injury once the injury is an issue, but people start working on the body composition when they say, oh shit, I really want to look better, or I've got a wedding coming up, or I've got a stag do or something. I don't know. People don't get in shape for stag do's these days, but whatever it may be, there's some reason to get in shape, and it generally comes through looking in the mirror and looking at the aesthetics of it. But I see kind of a different thing coming down the tracks. I mean, I think we've had a huge step back in the gym industry in terms of how we've all switched so readily to digital, or a lot of people have switched so readily to digital. And yes, digital has a place in terms of, you know, people doing workout classes online. And it's great because it has given access to a lot of people who maybe thought, oh, well, I need to be in a gym in order to exercise, or I need to be in a gym in order to train. When you really do have, as long as you've got, you know, a bit of space at home to move around in, then you can really work on trying to get into new positions and getting a bit of a sweat on and working on whatever that goal may be. But I feel that there's going to be no replacement for what we were talking about earlier, which is the community setting and having people coming in to the same room physically, interacting with each other, exposing each other's weaknesses and saying, look, your squat's shit, or you're weak as piss, or whatever it may be, to highlight issues and not just the issues, but coming together as a group. And I feel that has been forgotten slightly, especially with like the advent and explosion of Peloton and these other kind of, and Joe Wicks and like fitness classes that are purely based online and purely focused around, like you're saying, the output, which is just getting sweaty.
Yeah, but I see these are like, they're like the receptionists. You know, all they're doing is that they're just bringing people into the market. So they have their place. We need the Joe Wicks because he gets people going, actually, you know what? This fitness isn't so bad. You know, make a nicer meal, exercise a little bit, you know, build up those endorphins and stuff like that. And then they're looking for something else. So I see what you're seeing. And I think it's just a buy-in point. We need these big brands like Peloton. How, you know, that's not sustainable in my eyes. It's like, that's a buy-in, you know, that's expensive, like clothes rack ultimately in the end. It's going to be this thing that you buy. No, it feels like you're invested into your health by buying such a grand bit of kit.
What's a Peloton bike these days? How much does that cost?
I have no idea, but it's an investment, right? So you're making this investment. So you're saying, I take myself seriously. I really want to get fit. And I'm sure they'll do it all for the right intentions. And I imagine there's some amazing classes on there and they get the endorphins going. And then at some point they're going to be, what's next? Okay, what's next? So I feel that all the time it's like the Globo gyms, they are the places where people go first. They get that step in. It's like someone like yourself, right? You step into that world. There's somewhere safe for you to go train. Maybe with a couple of mates or whatever, you'll try stuff out. You have no idea what you're doing. And then, you know, you figure some stuff out yourself, which is great. And then you'll probably go find something that gives you a little bit more direction. So I think the more people have their foot in the door, that language starts to change. Then we can start having a conversation with them, because to move them from nothing to the sort of conversations that we're having right here is a big leap. But if they're already done 3 months of Joe Wicks and they manage to stick at it and they feel a bit better, now that this conversation might mean something a bit different to them because they have that access point. They can see, oh, actually, you know what? There's nothing that he's doing that I can't do. Maybe I can't do all of them well right now, but if I just practice for a little bit, you know, I will make some progress. And people are making progress, and ultimately that's what it's about. It's about being able to find a way that you improve your situation. And the first thing is we need these sort of characters just to get their foot in the door. You know, so I see it as an opportunity because they can attract such a wide, big market, get them all started. Yeah, it's like anything, right? It's like it's entry. It's for everyone. It's universal. It's not niche. It's not specialized. But for most people, that's their start point. Some people, they will stay there, and then hopefully there'll be a big chunk of people who are like, let me try something. Let me have a go at this sport. Let me have a go at this. Now, what's this all about? You know, because I think the issue in this country is that no one's used to getting coached. True. No one's used to getting like trained. Like, and so many people I hear is like, my idea of school is when it was PE, it was like I was all in. I was like, I absolutely loved this thing. It meant I wasn't in a classroom, wasn't like writing with a pen, like copying out some stuff that I had no interest in. It could run around like an absolute lunatic for an hour, and I was happy as, but that wasn't the same for a lot of people. A lot of people, they didn't feel comfortable doing that. They felt they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't want to be the one who wasn't that good. And that environment is that if you're not being coached I'd imagine it's quite tough, right? If you're looking to be the best at something and then you realize that you're the worst in your class, or you think you're the worst in your class at something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's 30 kids in there. You don't want to be number 30.
Yeah.
So you just go, actually, you know what? I'll just sit out.
Yeah.
Whereas a sport like weightlifting's for everyone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter where you're at, and that's my thing, is that I love seeing people who just want to be better. I hate people who come in and they're talented, they're good and all this sort of stuff, but they don't want to be better. It's like, don't waste my time. I'd much rather work with a guy who struggles to lift the empty bar, but he works his butt off to kind of work on his weaknesses. That's the one I want to work with. There's so much talented people out there and they waste it because their egos just doesn't allow them to step out the way of themselves. So I think that's where how long that takes, I don't know, but I think ultimately it's getting people into these. They start becoming more informed. They become a bit braver. We as an industry learn how to connect to these people who have got started by these kind of companies, and we help push them on into more specific niche things and grow sport and recreation and being fit and vibrant. Hopefully, it's difficult to know exactly how far we can take that, but it's only going to be built on people. Really, the facilities make such a small factor, and it's having people to inspire room full of people to try and do things differently.
I mean, that's the difficulty though, is that, I mean, what you're talking about in terms of being coached and having a mentor is massively important, and it's almost a luxury now that so many people look up to Instagram influencers or people on social media who put up the output as, being like 5% body fat or 8% body fat, or like super lean or just super ripped as the end goal. And again, reinforcing that kind of ego as the main driver. And again, a lot of gyms around the place, people are looking up, and the kids are certainly looking up to just the most ripped guys in the gym. And I mean, getting over that, I mean, that's where the kind of seed is planted.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's difficult because, being a little bit older now, it's like, and you see through that stuff. But someone younger, I don't know how they respond to it. I think there's part of it that's kind of inspiring, because it will be like, it'd be quite nice to be that way for one day. But then when you start having the conversation of all the things that you have to give up to do that, and then the feeling of when those days are gone or whatever, it's like, I don't know, it's and quite often with all those fitness models is what they actually do to get those results. And just so few of them are properly natural. That's the issue.
Steroid use.
Steroids, and then even if it's not steroids, it's taking absolutely every supplement under the sun.
Yeah.
Massive water cuts that they would do, the extreme dieting, and these extreme diets, they're usually not good for you. So
no. That
being seen as being a healthy lifestyle choice. And that's the issue, is it's attached to healthy lifestyle choice when it's not. You're not a better health wise if you're a fitness model. In fact, you're probably your health is probably in the bin.
Yeah,
more often than not. There's very few who are in that sort of shape and would be considered healthy.
Yeah,
and it's just very easy. It sells especially on Instagram. And I think how we tackle that as a market is very difficult, but I feel like that's where sport itself is, and having that focus, having that outcome, because that's an easy outcome, right? It's an obvious one. If you're a girl or a guy and you look at him as like inspiring, these people who been said to be very good looking or whatever, and that you want to do that yourself. But I think if we add more value to the outcomes of proper training, proper, being involved in sport and the community of it and the lifestyle benefits and the process of it, but it's got to be process. Some people are designed, have that genetic makeup to go all the way. They have all the kind of life has just fallen that way, and hopefully they can be pushed to maximize that fully. And I think everyone else is that they can do good, and that's brilliant, because if you compare that to what's going on right now with obesity and everything like that, it's like you're so far ahead health wise compared to the national average now. You're in a different playing field completely, and I think that needs to be it kind of needs momentum. But media is kind of very warped on what they believe health to be.
100%. Well, just before we wrap up, can you give a word on like what the gym industry has kind of experienced having to close, and like firstly putting in all the measures and like all this madness around COVID? Like how have you guys adjusted to that?
Well, we're pretty fortunate because we're socially distanced anyway. From the point of view is that we're in platform areas, so we've had to put it to one lifter per platform. This is when we're open, and then kit being cleaned all the time, which isn't great for the kit at all. So we'll see how much damage that causes, how quickly kit deteriorates from that. But from that point of view, it's fairly easy to kind of offer a safe environment. Being closed, I think the hardest thing is just not knowing how long it's going to take. You try and offer your members a bit of reassurance and that we're coming back and things like that, and then it gets to a point where you're not so sure if that's going to be the case. So just up in the air really, and it's like trying to adjust, a lot more coaches, a lot more clubs, trying to improve their online offering to kind of bridge the gap. We've been super lucky that our members have been very supportive and trying to keep us afloat, which has been amazing. It's been an absolute godsend. But it's always difficult when you get conflicting science and things like that. We feel that we're pretty safe. We offer a safe environment, and blanketed all gyms to close when we're not all the same. From our point of view, it's very disappointing to see the state of the supermarkets, for example, and yet we're not allowed to open. And obviously the bad rep that the press wanted to give us straight off the bat, that gyms are dirty and all this sort of stuff, when it's not really the truth. And then the evidence didn't really point to that, when we were open. So I think you're just left with a lot of questions, a lot of doubt, a lot of the stress that comes with it. From one point we're not stressed because we're not open, but then it's like restarting your business from scratch again when we do reopen. And then they don't really see it that way. It's that you've got this re-ramping. It's not like we open our doors and then all our members are back in. It's going to be quiet. We're going to have to dig deep. We're restricted by volume and capacity, so we've already got our hands behind our back already before we start, because we're capped in terms of capacity. So we just got to get on with it and just, it's just like training. It's like coming back from an injury, just dig deep, do the basics, relearn the basics. So trying to use it as an opportunity as best we can to improve certain elements of our business, etc. Whilst we have the time, start looking at our options to expand. Certainly digital, but maybe other venues as well. And I'm sure we'll be looking to in any contracts is to make them COVID proof as well.
Yeah. Yeah, as
if
much
that's
as you
even
can.
doable.
Yeah.
No, obviously it's disappointing when you have your insurance and stuff, and then I think they kind of put it under the act of God.
They try and wiggle out of that one.
Yeah, it's like, no, act of God, pretty much. So it means there's nothing from there.
There was a ruling the other day, I think, from another like consortium of small businesses, and they ruled in favour of the small businesses that the insurance have to pay out. So there might be a precedent there, but I don't want to give you any false hope.
But it was a really small clause. So it was on a certain clause that needed to be in your contract, and that I think was like 1% of. Yeah, so it was a very, very, I don't know what clause it was, but there must have been some legal company that put this clause in.
Yeah.
And then if it had that clause, then you had a case to ask for kind of insurance. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be exciting. Coming back, it's a new opportunity. Get back to what we love. Hopefully do it better. Hopefully, this is the last one.
Yeah.
No more lockdowns, but we'll see. We thought the last one was the last one. So.
I mean, yeah, that's it. And then the one before that. But I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, and just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you've got the exact right attitude, and when it all does come back, where can everyone find you, and where can they sign up?
So for anyone who wants to get into weightlifting, it's teamlower.com. Just have a little browse. We have one-to-one group sessions. We have online products now as well. We're designed for everyone. I believe weightlifting is for absolutely everyone. Doesn't matter what age you are, what kind of physical state you're in right now. I absolutely believe that you will enjoy weightlifting, and it can be an excellent part of your lifestyle.
100%. I can vouch for that. But Mike, thank you so much for joining me, and
thanks for having me.
We'll get deeper into some more nitty gritty at another time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Nice. Awesome. Thanks, Finn.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers.
Much appreciated.